Well, I'm Keith Lindsey and I'm a Professor of Plant Molecular Biology at Durham University. We're interested in the lab in how genes control plant development. But when I was 8 years old, I was obsessed with the US space programs, the Apollo programs, and I decided that I wanted to be an astronaut. Around about the same time, I was also inspired variously by Hank Marvin, by John Lennon and Peter Green of Fleetwood Mac, and I began planning a career as a rock guitarist in the unlikely event that my NASA application was declined. But sadly, neither of those panned out. So I had to think of alternative career routes, and it started really at secondary school when I specialised in science and I became particularly interested in biology. And I had the opportunity to study at A-level, pre-university exams, both botany and zoology as separate subjects. So I took both of those, and that gave me a lot of exposure to the life of plants. And my biology teacher at the time produced histology manuals as a sideline interest. And on Friday evenings after school, but before my guitar lessons, I would cut sections of plant material, stain them up, and some of these images that I produced ended up in his books actually. But all of this got me interested in plants and in developmental biology, and so I applied to university to study botany. And I got a place at Oxford University, which was great fun. In those days, the class sizes were quite small. I was one of 14, I think, in my year studying botany. And I've worked in plant science ever since. So as I mentioned, our lab research interests are in plant developmental biology. It's a very complex subject, of course. A major question in developmental biology is how the thousands of genes in an organism work together to allow the development of a complex multicellular structure from a single cell. And in my PhD, I studied how aspects of plant cell differentiation are regulated in plant cell cultures. And it was around about that time that I went to my first SEB meeting, which was held at Leicester University in, I think, 1983, on plant biotechnology. And around about that time, plant molecular biology was really taking off. So I then did a postdoc at Rothamsted, having done my PhD at Edinburgh. Did a postdoc at Rothamsted developing plant transformation systems, which was still quite a new area at the time, but that has built the foundations on which my career has kind of developed. And my first faculty position, my first academic job, was at Leicester University, and I then, when I was in position, decided to develop a program to develop a gene tagging approach to identify genes in Arabidopsis that are required for plant development. And early on we were interested in genes expressed in the developing embryo, but then we moved also into studying root development as well. And we're still working on some of those genes that we identified 30 odd years ago. And then in 1996 I moved to a chair in Durham, and I've been here ever since. And we're currently using a range of techniques to study the gene and signalling networks that contribute to the identity and activity of the stem cell populations that exist in the root tip, in the root meristem, the dividing cells there. But shortly after moving to Durham, I got much more involved in the SEB first as a member of the plant section panel, and then as chair of that committee. And this was a great experience, meeting people, organising meetings, all the kind of good things that the SEB still does. And then in 2009 I was appointed as the vice president of the SEB, and then I took over as president in 2011 until 2013. And that was a time of a lot of transition actually for the SEB. We moved into a new building, Charles Darwin House at that time. We developed a new association with the Society of Biology, as it was known then, now the Royal Society of Biology, and we provided financial support for the new UK Plant Sciences Federation, along with the Gatsby Charitable Foundation, and also funded a new PhD studentship scheme with Angela White being the first incumbent of that scheme. Around about that time we appointed the excellent Paul Hutchinson as the new Chief Executive Officer of the SEB, who oversaw the day-to-day management of all the big projects that were going on at the time. We also set up a new journal, Conservation Physiology, launched in 2013 and led by the first editor-in-chief, Stephen Cook. The SEB has had a major impact on science internationally, I would say, through its meetings and publications. I'm sure it will continue to go from strength to strength to innovate, and in particular to encourage early career researchers over the next 100 years as well, and I'm sure it will do. And I would certainly encourage any early career researchers to get involved with the SEB and really make the most of the opportunities that it offers.